Hello and welcome to Deft and Dorky. We're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Hello.
Yeah, boy.
We're back. Today we're going to talk about dun 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 metagaming.
It's so bad.
So yeah, let's start off by talking about why you shouldn't do it. So
It's
for
so
anyone
bad.
for anyone unfamiliar with the term metagaming, you may be new to D&D then. It is basically like when someone says you shouldn't metagame, that means that you should not make your character act on information that you as a player know, but your character doesn't know. For example, you might be fighting a troll, and you as a player know that trolls regenerate at the beginning of their turn unless they're hit with fire. But unless there's some way for your character to know that, that does not necessarily mean that your character should go out of their way to hit the troll with fire damage.
Oh, I'm gonna put my sword down and swing this torch.
Yeah, exactly.
Odd choice, sir.
So yeah, what are there ways that you ever had to like hold back from metagaming?
I mean, yeah, so especially like the most severe instances come from like let's say your party is split or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's gonna be information that flows to certain parts of your table that isn't available to characters on your other part, you know?
Right.
Like pivotal game changing information. It's like especially like maybe you're mid combat or whatever, and it's just like I guess I'm gonna run over to where I think they are because they just got downed and I want to stop them from dying even though I don't know anything about like that's I think we've all done it. I think we all have these moments where that happens. Also like knowledge of the game, same thing. Like I'm trying to remember. Like, there was an instance where we were fighting a beholder and I was like, do I know it's an aberration? Because then it's funny because like what is it? Protection from good and evil, I think was the spell.
Yeah.
And I was like, I asked her, I was like, do I know that this would work on it? And you let
Mm-hmm.
me roll Arcana or something, and it worked. So I was like, okay, cool. I get this dope ass spell for this fight, which is like, so in an instant, like it'd be such a bummer to be like, oh, like something that I am good at, or the spell would be helpful or whatever. I don't get to use it because like my character doesn't know.
Yeah.
But it does also make sense from time to time. So, yeah, tricky thing to balance, I suppose. We've all been there.
Yep.
We've all
So
fallen
yeah,
temptation.
that's one of the things I wanted to talk about is like don't just do your best. A lot of times you can get around that by asking your DM if your character would know, if there's any way your character would know whatever information. Like, again, if you're fighting a troll, you can ask your DM, "Do I know that this is a troll?" And your DM can be like, either, "Nope, there's no way you could possibly know," or roll a nature check or roll some kind of ability check to see if you know what it is you're fighting. And if you find out, oh yeah, your character does know this is a troll, then do I know that fire makes trolls not regenerate? That could be a separate check. Uh, and it's up to your DM whether he wants to, let you take those checks or not. Because for if you're playing with someone, if you're DMing for someone who has the monster manual memorized, it is very hard then to make up an encounter where they're going to have to figure something out because they will already know everything. So that's why
Not
some
just
DMs will even go as far as to like just mix up monsters and describe them in weird ways and use a stat block but reskin it to be something else. Which is
yeah,
all fine. Which
make up
is
your own monster.
Yeah, which is great. It works excellently a lot of the time. But there's always going to be something inevitably something will happen where you the player know something more than your character does. And you can always
Throw
just ask
throw a
ask for a check.
yeah, throw a lich at them and make it have no phylactery.
Yeah.
Like that,
So
player.
so your player's like, I do an investigation check. Oh, for what? For some kind of thing that could be small and stuff. as they
Stuck.
sneakily, shiftily look side to side, and you're like, okay, make that check, and then they make it, and you're like, there's nothing here.
There's nothing here. This creature has zero weaknesses. Yeah, don't do that. That's bad.
So yeah, just try to like you always ask before you. I mean, it's easy enough to ask. Do I know this particular information? Does my character know? But I also wanted to talk about the good parts of metagaming.
When you
Um,
should metagame.
so if you're playing an adventure and you come across a dungeon and your DM is like described the entrance to it very detailed. Obviously, they've set up something for you in that dungeon. Now, your character may not want to go in that dungeon, but as a player, you're like, I know there's going to be something fun in the dungeon. I think it's okay to metagame
Yeah.
and be like, yeah, we're going in there.
If you've made a character that's too afraid to go do stuff, then maybe you should make another character that's more prone to play the game that they are.
I suppose that's true. Um, I think there's other instances though, like especially if your DM's like giving you clues, right? And they want you to figure things out. I think that you can, especially if you're willing to like sort of like let's say that your party is gathering these clues over a long period of time. And not every character has gotten 100% of the clues because maybe you just haven't talked about them in game. But every player has heard all the clues, and one player is starting to put things together,
Yeah.
but their character doesn't know like a couple of these things technically.
Yeah.
I think it is 100% okay for your character to walk over to the other character and sort of suggest, "Hey, find a way to suggest. Tell me the thing that you know."
That is so. One of my biggest metagaming pet peeves is did you tell us that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I hate that. Because, like, by the way, we're all still playing a game at a table, like, or online with each other. Like, we are still having conversations as Brian as Isaac while this
Mm-hmm.
game is going on. So, like, if it's integral to the game to move forward, that, like, you're in the escape room together, even though you're playing these characters. Like, I hate it when it's like, hey, did you tell us that? I would rather err on the side of, like, oh, my bad, my character doesn't know that, than, like, I guess we're just gonna continue on humdum just because I allegedly don't know. It just, if there is something that's just like, oh, I don't know, like if there was something about my characters or like an interaction that I had that I didn't want the others to know and they just made the assumption, then I would just be like, sorry guys, like technically you don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that's better than just being like, can you please make your character tell us? Oh yeah, okay, here, this is it. Like, okay, cool. Now that we got that super unnecessary 30 seconds out of the way, let's move on.
Okay, well, do you think do you like the idea of sort of finagling that information out, or do you? I guess it depends on the information. If it's something that is like
I
private
mean,
or
I think,
hidden to your character, maybe it'll be
yeah,
different. I guess.
yeah, absolutely. I think in this instance, if you're talking about like collective clues or revelations that are advancing the main experience of the game, then like I just think that everyone gets it, you know.
Okay.
But if there is something that's just like, hey, this is very unique to my backstory, and I'm intentionally keeping it to my character or one or two other characters or whatever, I don't know. I feel like that, for the most part, feels obvious when you're interacting at the table. Maybe not, but like, let's just say as an example, the example you gave, where it's just like your character, your table is unraveling the tapestry of clues and deception and whatever to the big plot leading to the kind of eventual intersection with the climax of the big bad or whatever. That's his like I'm just gonna be like free flowing with info. Like everyone at the table has heard this, and I'm just gonna operate under the assumption that all of our characters at some point have shared it with one another. But if there was like a side beat where like, in the middle of my watch at night, like I had a revelatory vision that like my character's fill in the blank dad figure or whatever like reached out to him, Simba, find yourself. Also, like this is partially related or whatever, and it was like, by the way, your mom killed me and she's the big bad. Then if it came up in those conversations, because all the other characters are watching that moment, probably, then if it came up in those conversations, I would be like, actually, I wouldn't have told any of your characters that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe that's kind of
Yeah,
a jerk-ish thing to say or insert, but I don't mind.
I could see that, but also I feel like well, I try to. It's not always possible or practical to do this, but in those sort of circumstances, I like to get, like in our case, just have everybody deafen for something like that, where you're about
Sure.
to receive some information that is specifically about you, that
Yeah.
is set up for your character to share or not share.
Right.
I would prefer, like in person, you can say, "Could everyone please leave the table for a moment, and we'll call you back."
Sure.
Online, everyone deafen. I think that those things are. I like the way those things feel,
Yeah.
because it feels more sort of heavy and important.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I would like to. I mean, like I said, it's not always 100% practical, but I like to the idea of those sort of instances being more blatant, that your character doesn't know because you don't know, because it's private.
Here's another example.
Okay.
Like some tables will have a character like open the chest or like, oh, there's a secret compartment in the desk. Like, what did you find?
Mm-hmm.
Most tables like, oh, I found like, you find within the desk or the chest or whatever this, and this, A, B, and C. And most of the time, I think most characters would be like, okay, cool, and then you move on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you have a particular character who's a little bit of a shisty one, and like A and B, I'm going to share with the party, but C, I'm going to pocket for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, we found this important letter, and there's this cool dagger, and there was 50 gold in there. Like, I don't tell the rest of the group if there's 50 gold. I think it's super lame if a party member is like, can I see if he did that or not? And it's like, you wouldn't have done that if like he was never, you know what I mean? Like in the other scenario where he just tells you all the things and you're not bothering to like keep it a watchful eye.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. In that sort of scenario, I would make the character perform a sleight of hand check and
Sure.
put it against passive perceptions of everyone else.
Yeah.
Unless there's some direct thing where one of the characters is like, "I'm looking at that chest," then I was like, "Okay, go ahead and make an active one."
Yeah.
Another example that I just thought of while we were talking about this, and I want to hear your thoughts on, is things like mind control. Like you're a character suddenly is under the influence of someone else,
Mm-hmm.
and you describe that to the player, right? Like
Yeah.
you feel something heavy in your mind, and suddenly your actions are not your own, and then the rest of the party goes, "Can I tell?"
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. It's like, no, you can't unless they're being super freaking weird.
Yeah, and
If they do, yeah.
go ahead.
If
With
they
your
do
thought.
something, I was gonna say like if under mind control, oh, all of a sudden like I'm shanking you in the bed, like I'm just stabbing you. It's like okay, something's weird is going on,
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with that. Same thing with like charm. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or like dominate person. Like
Yeah.
for example, you're in the middle of combat, dominate person. You're like, well, I'm just gonna stand there and not attack the bad guy. It's like no, 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 no. You're dominated. You're gonna help me out. Like
Mm-hmm.
don't. Mm-mm.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where, especially like, it's a tough thing because once you've used it once in a campaign, all your players know exactly how to counter it. Because once they figure it out, like that's important to counter. We gotta slap that guy in the face until he snaps out of it.
See, that's another like that's another thing, right? Like, because
Yeah,
isn't that the way to stop
most of
the
the time. Yeah.
the yeah? And that's another, you know. Oh well, I'm just gonna go run up and punch him. It's like you don't. What has your character ever dealt with something like this? How would you know that? You know, I don't know.
Yeah, like I mean, and it's the only like experience you have is like through TV and film. And it's like if something like that happens, there's a pause, right?
Yeah.
Like you're fighting back to back with this thing with your friend, and suddenly you feel you got hit in the back, and you turn
Mhm.
around and see them with the blade that's covered in your blood. I
Yeah.
mean, 9 movies out of 10, they stand there stunned for a second before they don't just like go wailing on
Yeah.
this person.
Yeah. Absolutely. And if they did go whaling, it's like I'm gonna very intentional. Like for the first time in this campaign, I'm gonna very intentionally use an unarmed strike. It's like what the freak? Like
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
No.
You're gonna yeah.
I don't know.
If you're gonna turn and attack, you're not gonna like hold back unless this is something that you've specifically seen before and are
Yeah.
prepared for. Yeah,
Totally. Totally.
and even then, like it might take a depending on how they play it off. Like oh sorry,
Yeah.
my bad.
Now,
Didn't mean to stab you there.
if you're at my table, I will never use those spells against you because I don't believe in those status effects because I think it's lame to not be able to do something on your turn. But
Well,
nevertheless, they exist.
one of the ways that I think is cool to use them is like you like it depends on your table, but
Hmm.
if you use it on someone and like okay, you know what your character knows about who does
Yeah.
what in this party.
Yeah.
Go kill the person you think is most important.
Yeah.
Then I
Yeah.
think it's fun, right? Because it's like
Yeah. They
you
still
get
get
to
to do things.
yeah,
It's not like stunned or
paralyzed.
paralyzed or
Yeah.
anything like that. Like, gosh, screw those things, dude.
But it's whenever you if you have a table where you tell someone that like go kill the most
Hmm.
important person and then they start pulling punches. That's
Yeah.
another type of metagaming. It's like no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no.
No, you go for that squishy caster over there.
Yeah.
Get on top of that shit. Like, I'm gonna go hit the barbarian. No, you're not. You're gonna go hit that sorcerer. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like you can make the
Lean.
argument that like a monster doesn't really know what's going on with your party. They don't know
Yeah.
like they're just attacking because they're it's a moment in time where they're in the moment. But you
Yeah.
have traveled with these people. You know the weaknesses of this group, and you know the strengths.
This goes to something we could talk about another time or something. I don't know, just like set aside your risk aversion. You know what I mean? Like lean into these decisions and like enjoy the experience because it can be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't go into that cave or like maybe I shouldn't like act fully I don't know, just lean into it, dude. It's going to turn out okay. It's a game.
Yeah.
90% of your DMs are not out here to kill you. So like, lean into it. I'd say 80% of them will Deus Ex Machina your ass out of a situation. So, like,
It's sad, but most of the time that is true. Yes.
yeah. Like, oh, you worked
There
really
are
hard on that
yeah.
character, and I wrote a backstory, and you wrote some story in there too, and, you know, dying is sad, so I'm not going to force that on my players.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I
which,
can't speak for every DM, but like, yeah, if you've collaboratively written a backstory with your player, and then you have
mhm,
written like part of the plot to interact with that backstory, you don't want your players to
yeah,
die any more than they do, because that
don't,
means that's work that you've wasted.
yeah. And no shame if that's you and that's your table, that's cool. You know?
Yeah.
This is a game. You're playing it to play it. So, yeah, for those listening, we had some technical difficulties.
Yeah, we're back
We're
in the middle of
back.
this thing. You may or may not have even noticed, depending on how I edit this. But You also, if you're an astute follower of the channel, you may have gotten a little preview in the
Yeah,
time it took me to fix the problem. But now we're fine. So
we're fine.
yeah, as far as metagaming goes in the mind control department, I also think that it's something that can be played with. And don't be scared to make a move that doesn't seem make a move that seems to in from the player's perspective like a wrong move, but from your character's perspective is not, because it might be interesting.
Yeah.
It's designed to be interesting. In fact, if your DM is mind controlling you, well, you'll know. It's your table. You should have a feel for how what is acceptable and what is not. But entertain the idea that you don't know what's going on. If your character wouldn't know. Man, that thing kind of threw off a lot of my where I was going with that. Do you have any other thoughts on that specifically?
You really threw off my groove.
Yeah, it did. It's my
Um,
mistake.
no, just like, I think earlier I kind of touched on this, but like, let's pick any other game, as simple as Sorry, or God forbid you have to play Candyland, and scale it all the way up to something like D&D or another tabletop, or like another like not as far as like a tabletop RPG, but like, some of those like high skill ceiling board games and stuff like that. Like, even video games, metagaming is an element of it, and like it's something that is truly impossible to escape. And sometimes it's good to lean into, because I think that sometimes, one, it reminds us that we are playing a game and this is an escapist effort. Two, I think that it enables just a recognition of like a joint agreed upon kind of boundary system, like rules in place, and rules allow us to have fun. So like being able to be a little bit meta about things, kind of, like, for example, when it comes to tabletop RPG, when it comes to D&D, oh, I'm gonna cast a spell. Is that person within 60 feet of me? Like, who thinks that way? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you have to put these constraints on it that are very unrealistic, you know,
Yeah.
in order to make sure that there's seamless, connectivity amongst one another.
Yeah, and it comes down to like, you if especially if it's a spell that you use all the time, you have a general idea of the limitations of it as a character. Now,
Hmm.
whether or not you'd know, well, at 60 feet it is perfect, and at 60 feet and 1 inch it is entirely worthless.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and I understand like wanting to measure that out. So it's especially if things are balanced around you actually being able to play your character well. I get like, yeah, let's go ahead and measure. It's a quick thing.
Right.
But in some circumstances, I can totally see where a DM is within like justification to be like, you don't know, it's pretty close.
Yeah.
And then you can be like, well, I've already used all my movement. It's do this or nothing, or it's
Hmm.
do this or something that has a little more range and I'm feel more certain about, or it's don't use my action at all, or use my action to dash and get closer. Any of those things are fine, and feel it out at your own table. Your own table will give you a good idea of
They'll rebel.
of what you want to do. And
They'll
most of the
revolt.
time, a measurement's not that big a deal, but I can certainly see where occasionally it would be like you aren't sure.
You aren't sure.
Um, yeah. So I mean, I don't know. Do you have anything else to add to specifically that kind of thing? If not, I will transition. uh, how do you think? How do you think leveling is metagamed? Because this goes into min maxing a bit as well. Um, when you level up, how much metagaming do you like to allow yourself?
I've only ever played casters for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
and it is so at the other I played. I also have only played casters that cannot freely prepare spells.
Okay.
So I really have to admit, most of the time I'll be like, I haven't touched this spell in like 3 levels, and I know that we're about to go into something, so I'm gonna take this even though it could be worthless. Like, I took seeming very intentionally for our campaign
Mm-hmm.
because I knew, like, man, there's gonna be a ton of us and we need to sneak into an area. This would be very helpful. I also took Greater Restoration, knowing like there's a chance that I might have to do something with this. Um, I don't know. I think that at the end of the day, like, what's the point of the game? Is it to have a good time? I think so. Does
Yeah.
the metagaming get in the way of that, or does it enhance it?
It's both.
Yeah,
Yeah, you have to
absolutely.
find out that balance there. So yeah,
So,
when because when I'm leveling, I definitely look at the spells and man, especially for casters, I look at spells and I'm like, what spell? I kind of have a couple categories, right? What spells do I want to take because they are mechanically strong and they will help the party, and then
mhm.
what spells would I take if it was 100% just this character?
Yeah,
Like, there are some characters I would make where I'm like, I would never take Fireball. But every caster has, like, if you don't take Fireball, you're nerfing yourself in some respect, which is okay if that's the way you want to play it.
I
Um,
didn't take Fireball.
there you go.
I'm not afraid.
Be not afraid. Don't take Fireball.
Yep.
um, and yeah, I think that's a completely legit answer too, because like it's now it goes a little far. I think if you're like, no, this character takes no AOE, but you're the only
Yeah.
class in your party that can, then it hurts a little bit because they're kind of relying on you to be able to deal with large numbers of monsters. Maybe I don't know. Talk to your table,
Yeah.
but it's like you got to try to find that balance. Like, yeah, you didn't take Fireball, but you did take some AOE spells.
Yeah. That's what matters.
Yeah,
I took one AoE.
yeah. I mean,
So
really, one is all you need. You just need to be able
yeah.
to deal with an area of some area of effect.
Yeah.
Um,
It's funny if you really want to think about it, uh like when you break down combat, like I used to be very conservative with like using spell slots and the big stuff, and now I'm just like, dude, fire away because like especially in if you're following rules as written, traditionally you're gonna get a lot of rest and you're gonna get a lot of that stuff back, and combat only lasts so long. Like use all your shiz, otherwise you're gonna feel not as cool in your game because you're too afraid to be like, oh, I don't want to use my second wind or my action surge because what if I need it later? It's like, dude, by the time later comes around, you'll have already short rested or long rested to get it back.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, and that's another metagaming thing, though, right? Like,
Hmm.
rest is coming, so do you use everything? Do you know that rest isn't coming? Do you save stuff? Like, and that can be in character too, I suppose. But knowing that, knowing when your rests are likely to come, I feel like is a hmm. Yeah, I feel like that's it can be a player thing and it can be a character thing depending on the situation. But just be careful to know, I guess, would be
Yeah.
the answer to that. Um, and some people use like here's the thing I wanted to discuss because about leveling. Some people still use, well, not still use. Some people just use the XP method
Hmm.
for leveling. Lots of people use milestone method. When using the XP method,
Hmm.
does metagaming suggest that you fight more you like run into more combats that are easily won.
We will kill boars.
Yeah, exactly. Does metagaming make you kill boars?
I mean, I think, it depends on, like, even in the pre-writtens, they do a pretty good job of being like, if you resolve this in any way, shape, or form, get this
Uh-huh.
back. Like, a lot of the time, it's just like, award your characters this much XP for this scenario, and it's
Hmm.
like, if they fight, then yes. If they don't, then yes also. Like, if they figured out a way to get around it, like, awesome.
Yeah,
So,
I totally like that. I think that, and that's that's another metagaming thing. It's sort of, it comes in more in games like Baldur's Gate, I guess, where you could go through a go through an encounter uh, peacefully with like RP, get your XP, and then turn around and kill everyone. Can you double
yeah.
up on XP?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I'm supposed to do that.
um,
I
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I just like I don't. Tough for me because I don't play games that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like oh, I don't know.
Um,
Like I don't go out of my way to like. I will go out of my way to look behind every corner and nook and cranny. What's behind the waterfall? But like that's more. I don't know.
and
It's also
that could be,
changed
that
too.
can
As
be
I
metagaming too. Like,
It is. It is. I don't want to go right because the right leads to the boss. Left, there's probably whatever it is.
yeah.
Uh, Left is a secret. If I know that in video games, if right is to the boss and I haven't gone left yet, I better check left because it could be something cool. So,
Yeah. Uh,
but
and one of the things I want to talk about with leveling in particular is if you're using Milestone, where do you think the milestones should be?
I'm running Curse of Strahd right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I've broken down all the milestones.
Okay.
So if you have an idea about the entire arc of your campaign, I think you should break it down by that. Like you knew from the start that like we were going to be anywhere from you told us like 13 or 14.
Yeah.
So I have a very we've played a handful of times and it's been a minute since we've leveled up because they just haven't gotten to one of the check marks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fine with that. Like I'm not going to give them it like yeah, it's been a minute,
Yeah.
No, like you have to earn it. Because I very intentionally planned for this campaign to go a certain way, and if I like just toss you a freebie, then you're gonna be overpowered, or like this is gonna go further than we should have been.
Mm-hmm.
So
Um, yeah, and that's something as far as like picking those milestones, I got better at um, for the second campaign than I did the first one. The first one, towards the end of it, I was like, you're a little under where I thought you'd be. Have a level.
yeah,
This one, I feel like I planned out a little bit better, and it's sort of felt more organic as to when the leveling would happen.
yeah,
But yeah, I think that for milestones, I try to make them either big story beats or big. Well, they're always going to be some kind of story beat, but like either overall arcing story arc or a personal, like a backstory, a character's, a PC's character arc. If
mm-hmm.
something is resolved, then that's a level.
Right.
It can sometimes get into trouble if you are doing lots of things sort of at once, and then you complete lots of those things within a couple sessions. I don't want to be like, oh, take 3 levels.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I have to sort of try to space it out a little bit, but yeah, and that's another thing. Like you don't. What are your thoughts on getting more than 1 level at a time? Don't like it?
No, stop. Not here. Unless I mean, like the only time I think that's cool is if you're jumping up to level 3 from the start.
Okay.
So,
We had that once in Michael's last campaign. Towards
hmm
the end of it, we had brought we were chasing these eyes, these big magical things around, right?
hmm
We finally got our hands on one. We've been carrying it around for a while. Like any like powerful NPC would like if we mentioned it, got suddenly very interested in it. It was like scary to hold on to, right? Because like these guys, if
yeah,
they knew we had it, it could be trouble. So we finally
right.
got one of these things back to where we wanted, like an NPC we wanted to give it to. And what he did with it was like he like did it, he hocus pocused it, and then we all like felt the energy of it go through us, and we got 2 levels out of it. And I was like, that is a cool way.
Mm,
That's a cool way to exhibit like multiple levels at the same time, because this thing that I've been like scared of kind of handling,
yeah.
it shows us just how powerful it is, right? It gives us
hmm
2 levels out of nowhere. So I think if you're going to do it, I think that was a cool way to do it. I enjoyed
What if
that.
you lose it?
Lose the item,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have gotten those levels, I guess. I don't know what would I
Like,
wasn't DMing for that one, so
would they take it? Would take that away, kind of thing?
oh no, it was like expended basically.
Oh, okay, okay. I see.
It wasn't like a concentration thing. It was a like, thanks for bringing this back. Here's what it can. Here's one of the things it can do. Boom, and then wow,
hmm
and you get 2 levels, and he like sticks it in his collection or whatever. I don't remember what he did with it, but like I thought that was a really cool way to bump us up a couple levels at a time. That didn't feel, uh, it didn't feel like it was forced. It felt like natural.
Yeah. There's this. So there's a lot of materials out there for Curse of Strahd, and one suggested element is like, long story short, there's like, it's in the domains of dread, so it's like essentially, uh, what is it called? Not the Feywild, but the Shadowfell. Shadowfell.
Uh huh.
Like it's kind of like Shadowfell adjacent, where it takes place, and there's all these different vying evil entities, and some of them you can interact with. And one of the suggested like edits to the game that's really popular is introducing this concept of like currying favor with these dark powers, if you will.
Okay.
They're in there, but some people expand it, and one of the popular expansions is like, if you curry enough favor and become like a champion of these dark powers, one thing that somebody suggested is like, you get these like temporary beast mode moments, and like if a student if a can you tell I work in education? If a player has one of those like kickoff moments, like the DM, it's like, hey, give them a whatever, give them a level 15 version of that character. Not even like a stat block, but like, here you go, you get whatever it is. Like, oh, all right, your level 7 paladin is all of a sudden level 15 for the rest of this fight. So, but it's
Okay.
temporary.
That is a thing. Okay. So here's the what I think is the downside of getting too many levels at once, and this would, I, I think, be amplified by that your example there, is that especially for players who haven't played that a class all the way to 20 or to whatever level it is, getting that many levels, you will likely not understand how a lot of your features work.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to have a mastery of the game to an
Yeah.
extent.
Yeah, even getting 2 levels at the same time can be a bit bewildering, I guess. Because if you
Mhm.
get, it's very nice the way that 1 level gets you a feature of some kind most of the time,
Right.
whether that be a new spell or an ability score increase or a feat or some sort of class feature or subclass feature. You're going to get some like one thing usually.
Mhm.
There's a couple instances where you may get a couple things, but they usually tend to work in tandem, not always. But anyway, you're
Right.
going to get one thing that you can then like, oh, I got this new thing. Let's take it out for a test drive. And then over the course of however long it takes you to get to that next level, you will have developed a semblance of mastery over that thing and know how it works, when best to use it, and in what circumstance, right? Whereas if you in your example, I was level 7. Now I'm level 15. You're like, I don't know what any of these things do, and it's only gonna
Yeah.
last for like 5 minutes. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a thing where people who know the rules are going to be able to get much more out of that than a newer player or someone who's even just new to the class. So there's the downside of getting too many levels at the same time, I guess. But it
Yeah.
does
You
sound very cool for if you kind of have an idea of what's going on.
just gotta know your table. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I couldn't be handed that and be like, okay, I'm ready to go. But some people could.
Yeah, especially if it's a caster. Like, uh,
There
here,
you go. All
go
these.
quickly. Pick out 10 new spells.
I think in those
Of
instances they
varying
like kind of
levels.
give them to it. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I think that would be better for sure.
it would be much more akin to being like, if you just get randomly handed like, oh, this is the monster stat block for like a wizard or an archmage, where it's just like that's basically a character sheet just without feats. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
like so.
Yeah. Um yeah, I think that I do you have any strong opinions of XP versus Milestone? Do you think one is clearly better than the other?
I I mean, it's funny like XP. I think that there's a feeling of reward. You know,
Mhm.
like I remember talking to my wife about this. Like she played second edition, I think, and then like just life circumstance, she hasn't played for a while, and then we started playing again.
Mhm.
And so the first time like I started DMing for a group of us and she started playing, she was like, "Oh, do we get XP?" I was like, "What? No, milestone." And she's like, "What? We don't get XP? Like that's fun to like get rewarded."
Mhm.
And I think there's something to that, but I also think that like after a little while it gets cumbersome, It's like,
Yeah.
math it out, guys. Like have your calculators ready. You just got 400 XP for that fight divided by 4 because there's 4 of you and da da da. So, I don't know. I I think as a DM you lose a sense of control over like I know I would like that would be one additional thing that as a DM I'd have to plan.
Mhm.
Like I don't want them to be level 5 yet, and so therefore I either have to like tone down the XP that they get for this fight or avoid it completely. Like if I'm going completely rules as written and I'm throwing this monster at them, well, they're going to get level 5 and crap, that's not what I want.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. I
I,
mean, I
I'm
of course agree that I think Milestone is better in almost every way. I think that XP can be cool just because like you have a better idea as a player of when you're going to level next,
yeah,
which can be cool, granted, but like I don't think it's worth the trouble that your DM has to go through. Like you're saying, like you have to then calculate every fight. Like, oh, was this going to push them? Because the encounters like that I have for the end of these story beats are going to be. I don't want them to be trivial because they've gone 2 levels higher than I anticipated they would be when they got here. And like
right.
you can rebalance stuff, but like yeah, I think that it's the milestone is also I feel like the milestone is just better for storytelling. Like it's
Yeah,
like if you're doing XP and you come across some random encounter in the middle of the forest that happens to level you, it's kind of anticlimactic to level there and then not at the end of a story beat where and then you're like, oh, you just leveled, so you're not going to level again for a while despite having come up to this thing that we've been building up for 10-20 sessions and now it's complete.
yeah, yeah, 1000%. I'm a proponent of it, and that's what I would encourage most people to do. So
Yeah, I agree. um yeah, I don't have much else to say about leveling. We could, unless you got anything else to say, I think we can just end it here. It'll be a little bit shorter
yeah,
than normal, but that's all right. um yeah,
yeah,
I'm good with what we've got.
yeah.
All
Me
right,
too.
cool. Well, thanks for chatting with me. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See
Bye.
ya. Bye.